church how to fight.
Come on now. Come on.
I believe subliminally, by not teaching the church how to fight, it might be suggesting that you can have a life without battles. And allow me just to open by saying that there's something that God has for you that you got to fight for.
Yes, right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
You will notice that in this life that the promises of God are always occupied by opposition.
Yes, God. Yes, God.
This opposition has to be overthrown in order to experience God's best for your life. Okay, some things, let me put it this way, some things you don't get without a fight.
Come on now.
And the fight is an expression of your faith. After all, you don't fight for what you don't feel belong to you. But if you believe it's yours, your faith is seen in your willingness to take on and to take down whatever it is that's standing in the way of what you feel belong to you.
Yes, God. Yes, God.
And this morning, the church, when we are convinced that it is ours and it belongs to us, we express it in our ability to fight for it.
Yes, God.
You're going to help me preach this, won't you?
Yes, God.
I mean, we might as well be honest. You don't get peace and joy without a fight. You don't get a sound marriage without a fight. You don't get a happy home without a fight. You don't get good friendships without a fight. But notice here, not only do we have to fight to get some things, but once you get it, Pastor Robinson, you got to fight to keep it. And it might not be all of y'all, but it might be just a few of us that you got to fight to get peace. And then once you get peace, you got to fight to keep your peace. You got your peace then always comes under attack. Talk back with me. You got to fight to get joy. But once you get joy, your joy is always under attack. Come on, help me preach it up here like I'm preaching it. You got to fight to get a sound mind. Because your sound mind is always under attack. How many of y'all know that it's some things that you got to fight to get it, and then you got to turn around and fight to keep it? And a few of y'all can testify that you haven't always had everything that you thought you wanted, but you had to fight what it was that God gave you just to keep it. Because your life hasn't been absent of battles, but you are here this morning because of the fact that here it is, you've been battle tested. And because you've been battle tested, your life is evident that there are some things that are worth fighting for. You said, I'm going to fight until I get the victory. Notice the text. Sit down, I'm just talking. Notice the text, if you please. Jesus is on the Mount of Transfiguration along with his disciples, and he comes down from the mountain to this crazy scene that's going on. There's an argument going on between his disciples and the scribes, or the religious leaders of that day. And Jesus comes down while they're in the midst of this argument. The argument and the contention is sparked by a man who at him in the text, he's a father who is fighting for his son. He's fighting for his sanity. He's fighting for his home life. He's fighting for his family. He's fighting as David did in Psalms 144 and verse 1, where David says, "Bless the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle." He is fighting, here it is, for a gift that God gave him that the enemy is trying to take from him. He's fighting to get back what the devil had snatched. And the Bible declares here in the text that this boy is living, here it is, under demonic oppression. A son he was given is now being taken under demonic oppression. And in the text, in both gospel narratives, gives us, the reader, a graphic description of what happens when you're under demonic oppression. And this is not a touch your neighbor part of the sermon, so you might just want to keep looking straight ahead. It's a graphic description of what a person looks like when they're under demonic attack. Don't look down your road, look straight ahead. It's a sign when you read the text of what a person acts like and what a person looks like when they're under demonic attack. Keep on, look straight ahead. It's a sign of what a person lives like and who they hang around when you're under demonic attack. Here it is, it's a graphic description. He says that when you're under demonic attack or demonic authority, the text says that you are robbed of your speech. All right, you're robbed of your speech. Keep looking straight ahead. You're robbed of your speech, which means that you can't talk for yourself. And when you can't talk for yourself and you got to stand behind other folk and let other folk talk for you, and you can't talk for yourself, it is a sign that you are under demonic oppression. Keep looking straight ahead. The text says that he foams at the mouth, which means that there are things that are coming out of his mouth that shouldn't even be in his mouth. And when there's things coming out of your mouth that shouldn't be in your mouth, it's a sign that you are under demonic oppression. Keep looking straight ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes,
when you say things and do things which are contradictory to the personality of the kingdom, it becomes evident that you are under an authority other than divinity. You are under demonic attack. And you can shout in church and go out and cuss people out in the parking lot. Keep looking straight ahead. You are under demonic attack. When you can stand at the altar and hold hands to the people that you hate, you despise, you dislike, you are under demonic oppression. When you come to church and you gossip and you lie and you cheat and you don't want change because you have been settled in your confusion, it is a sign you are under demonic oppression. The text says that he was thrown to the ground. I love Matthew's version because it's even more descriptive. It says that Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been this way? His father replies that since he was a boy, which gives us reasonable indication that he's no longer a boy, that now he's matriculated to the man. And so now he's a man, from a boy to a man. He's been the same way. And he said that he keeps falling into fire and water. He keeps falling into fire and water. Matthew is different from Mark because Matthew's account of the synoptic gospels give clear indication when he says that he keeps on falling into fire, into water, which means it is repetitive behavior that keeps happening over and over again, that it happens instantly. It's kind of like the Greeks call it a cosmocrator. It's like things that pop out of nowhere. He doesn't even know one moment he's walking and happy, the next minute he's falling into fire or falling into water. He keeps falling into the same stuff. He keeps doing the same thing and falling in the same stuff. Do you know anybody like that? That you would have thought they would have known by now what to stay away from, but they keep falling into the same mess, the same dysfunction, the same bad relationships. Keep hanging with bozo instead of getting with boo, the same mess. You would have thought by now that they would have learned their lesson of failure to keep falling into the same stuff, to the point, here it is, to the point that their dysfunction has become normal.
That's it.
And them being free feels abnormal. They are comfortable in bondage. And free feel abnormal. But watch this. Here's the shout. He keeps falling into fire and water. Y'all got that, didn't you? He keeps falling, here it is, in fire
And water.
that should have burned him. Water that should have drowned him. But he's still here. Some of y'all didn't get it. He keeps falling into fire that should have burned him. Water that should have drowned him, but he's still here. Some of y'all miss y'all shout. Let me put it this way. He keeps falling into the same thing that should have ruined his life, but he's still here. Reach over and touch somebody and say, I'm still here. Tell them, say, the devil could have took me out a long time ago, but I'm still here. Matter of fact, touch 3 people and just tell them, I'm still here. Tell them, say, I'm here. My shout ain't about no car. My shout ain't about no cash. My shout ain't about no clothes. I thank him that I'm still here. I thank him. I fell in the water, but it didn't drown me. I fell in the fire, but it didn't burn me. Some way, somehow, he allowed me, Pastor Steve, to get back up, and I can thank God that I'm still. Tell somebody, say, that's my shout. I'm still here. After all I've been through, after all my ups and downs, after all my heartaches, after all of my burdens, after all my sickness, I'm still here. I'm still here.
Thank you, Jesus.
And if that's your shout, just reach around and tell somebody, say, I'm still here. I'm still here. All right. Pastor Steve, I know we gotta go. You gotta preach. Let me give you 3 things. All right. And I'm gonna let you go home. The first thing I want to tell you, if you go fight and you gonna win, write this down. You can't fight just using religion. I knew that was gonna get me in trouble. You can't fight just using religion. Many folk have tried. Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Confucianism, Christianity. If you go fight, you can't fight just using religion. When you do an etymological study of the primitive root word religion, in the Latin, the word is religio. When you reduce the word to its lowest common denominator, the word religion means bondage. And for the church, many people show up, and the church for them has become a plantation. Whereby you feel you can come and just work it out. Religion without a Godward tilt is no good. It becomes slavery. And you cannot fight the devil just using your religion. You know that old song, I got good religion? Religion is the practice of doing something over and over and over again. You're religious about going to work because you want a check. You're religious about washing your car because you want it clean. You're religious about getting your hair done because you want to look good. And religion alone can't get you in the kingdom. Look what he says in verse 14. And when they came to the other disciples, you still got your Bible open, don't you? Verse 14 says, when they came to other disciples, Jesus comes down from the mountaintop. When he comes down from the mountaintop, there's a large crowd. The disciples that were remaining, his disciples, were arguing with the scribes. And they were arguing over religious issues. They were arguing over dogma. They were arguing over the business of the church. They were arguing over the do's and don'ts of the church. And here is a boy who needs deliverance and needs help, and the church is busy fussing. Neighborhood going to hell, and the church is busy arguing over do's and don'ts and bylaws and constitution and who's right and who's wrong and who got the power and who don't have the power and who's in control and who got position. And the church was arguing, and Jesus said, what's going on? Comes to this crazy scene. And Jesus comes down. And I see something in this, Pastor Steve. Because when you talk about religion, notice, and I'm going to come back to it, but notice that Jesus comes down. His disciples tried to deliver this little boy. That's what the text says, right? Okay. He tried to deliver this little boy, but nothing happened. Jesus comes down and everything changes. You pick it up at verses 17 through verse 20. The disciples tried to deliver the little boy, and the spirit did nothing. But when Jesus came down, the Bible said immediately the spirit noticed who Jesus was and began to act up. All right, write this down. That the enemy knows the difference between power and performance. The disciples were performing. Jesus came with power. And I don't care who you are in this church and any other church, Satan knows the difference between power and performance. Touch somebody and say, I don't want to perform. I want power. Exclusio power. Dynamo power. Right now power. He comes in. So the first thing, you can't fight just using religion. But the second thing is that you can't fight just confronting the symptom. You've got to confront the source. You can't fight just confronting the symptom. If you're going to win, you got to fight confronting the source. You see, often we look at the symptom and that's what we want to fight. A person lies, we call him a liar. That's a symptom. A person cheats, we call him a cheater. That's a symptom.
Come on, teach it.
A person gossips. That's a symptom. A person is an addict. That's a symptom. A person is a fornicator or an adulterer. That's a symptom. A person is a natural hater. That's a symptom. And if you're not careful, we will get so caught up in the symptom that we'll never attack the source. Our battle is not with flesh and blood. You gotta learn, if you're gonna win, you gotta attack the source and not just the symptom. Here it is. Jesus, he comes in to this crazy scene. He's with this crazy scene of the Father, and there's something interesting that he deals with his disciples on, because his disciples are all disturbed over what it is that God through Jesus is doing in the text. Because some of them were standing around, they were arguing with the religious leader. Jesus comes on the scene. He says, what are you talking about? The Father began to say, I brought, watch this. He says in verse 17, he says, teacher, I brought my son to you.
Yeah.
And your disciples. Okay, Pastor, I'm confused, y'all. Wait a minute. This man comes to Jesus and he looks at Jesus and he says, I brought my son to you and you couldn't do nothing.
Come on now.
How did he bring his son to Jesus and and Jesus was on the mountain. But he says in verse 17, I brought my son to you. All right, I had to read it beneath the printed surface to figure out what this man was saying. He's saying, I brought my son to your disciples who are supposed to be a representation of you. So if you could do it, they ought to be able to do it. And when I brought them to your boys, they couldn't do it. I brought my child who's confused about their sexuality to your church. And you couldn't do nothing. I brought my daughter who was raped to your church. And you couldn't do that. I brought my son who's slinging drugs to your church. And you couldn't do nothing. They were supposed to be a representation of the very presence of God. And so the man says, I brought him to you. And you couldn't do nothing. He begins to teach the man. Come here, preacher. He began to teach him a lesson. The lesson that he wants to teach him, and the lesson he wants to teach us. All right, go on. My son calls me, and he said, Daddy, have you seen the news? I said, no. He said, R. Kelly is free. Now, if you don't know who R. Kelly is, go ask your grandchildren. Junior said, Daddy, R. Kelly is free. I thought about that for a minute, and he said he paid his bond, and now he's free. And I said, son, let Daddy teach you something. R. Kelly ain't free. He just been released. And there is a difference in being free and being released. All right, you see, when a person is released, don't walk to the door. You still have some ties to the person that bound you. So that ain't free. That's just release. And the problem with the folk in the church is that you got a whole lot of people that's been released and ain't free. You wondering what's wrong with that man? He ain't free. He just been released. And he wants to go, but that thing that holds him, that thing that holds him, every time it goes so far. Pastor, what's wrong with the ministry? I've got people in positions that ain't free. They just been the same old stronghold that's been holding them for 10 and 20 years. They can't break it, and they think they're free until what's holding them pulls them back. Somebody tell you, let me tell you this. Here's the secret. Here's the secret. As long as you are released, you'll never enjoy the favor of God. You will always have temporary blessings. He's not free. He's just been released. The daddy said, if you can do anything, not help him, but I'm in this thing with you. That when you're hurt, I'm hurting. Help. If you can do anything, help us.
Yes, Lord.
Jesus points to his faith. And he said, Lord, I believe. But right through here, I need you to help my unbelief. Lord, I know you got a plan for me. But help me walk through the plan that you have for my life. And Jesus begins to share with him. He said, I understand. Show me where he is. Bring him to me. Brought this boy to Jesus, and he begins to convulse. The spirit recognizes who Jesus is. He begins to toss and turn, begins to foam at the mouth and throw himself down. The spirit began to shriek in him, and Jesus doesn't speak to the boy. He doesn't speak to the daddy, but he speaks to the spirit that's in the man and tells him to come out of him and never enter him again. You want to change your house? You want to change your life? You want to change your money? You want to change your marriage? You want to change your job? Begin to speak to that thing that's been holding you back. Speak to the thing that's been fighting against you and say, by the authority of Jesus Christ, I command you to get out of here and never come back. He had the power. So Jesus began to speak to him, and when he commanded this deaf and mute spirit to come out of the man, the Bible says that Jesus took him by the hand. It's interesting how the Lord can hold your hand. The old prayer warriors in the old church had a way of saying, Lord, hold my hand while I run this race. He said, because I don't want to run this race in vain. He says to him, let me hold your hand. Let me lift you up. And when he grabbed him by the hand, when he lifted him up, it is a sign that whatever you find yourself in, that he's able to lift you up. And that boy, when the spirit came out of him, he was laying there. They thought he was dead. Do I have a witness? He was laid there, and the people looked at him, wondered, had the enemy taken full control? And I don't know about you this morning, but there have been times in my life the enemy had me bound. Yes, there have been times that the enemy had wrapped me up, and those that are around me got some witnesses here that'll tell you that the Lord will provide. Do I have any help in here? Is there anybody here that the Lord has made a way for? Is there anybody here that you were dead, down and out there, and the Lord lifted you? Do I have a witness that'll say, yeah, Reverend, I've been some places that I should not have gone. I've done some things that I should not have done. I said some things that I shouldn't say. I had some bad friends, hung in bad places, and did bad things. I was dead in my own sin, but the master of the sea heard my despairing cry, and from the waters he lifted me. Now safe am I. Look at somebody, say, neighbor, I got some good news this morning. Just like he lifted him, he's lifting me right now. Yes, I've got to close here, but there's some things worth fighting for. Can you tell me before you leave, Reverend, what is it in my life that I ought to fight for? My joy, I'm fighting to hold on to it, because this joy I have, this joy I have, this joy I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. Touch somebody and tell them, after all I've been through, I still got my joy, I still got my peace, I still got my happiness, still got love, I still got peace of mind. Yes, yes, yes. Wait a minute, I got one more thing to tell you. When he lifted up the little boy, when he lifted him up, there was one more thing. He stood him up, but then the Bible said, when he stood him up, he stood on his own. He grabbed him by the hand, that's power. Stood him on his feet, that's position. But in his own spirit, he took placement. Yes, I gotta close, but if you gon' fight, you gotta have power. You gotta be in the right place and hold the right position. Yes, that's what Mama said. I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Yes, touch somebody, say, neighbor, I'm still fighting. Wounded, but I'm still fighting. Crying, but I'm still fighting. Broken, I'm still fighting. Lonely, but I'm still fighting. Wounded, but I'm still fighting. Tears, but I'm still fighting. Yes, yes, yes. Just do me one favor, grab somebody by the hand, hold it tight, look them in the face, and say, neighbor, I gon' God, tell them, say, I want God to just do one thing for me this morning, is to give me strength. Tell them, say, to give me strength to keep on fighting. If you believe it, slap somebody got to fight on till the victory is won. I don't want to be released. God set me free. Set me free from every demonic force that would come against me to hinder me. Ask him to set you free from everything that would break you, everything that would destroy you, everything that would hinder you. For he that the Lord sets free is free indeed. He tells him, come out of him and never enter him again. Where Satan wounded you before, he can't wound you there no more. Because you're stronger now. You're better now. You face victory. You know what defeat feels like? But even in defeat, he makes it sweet enough and provides victory. If you're here this morning, clap your hands. Whatever you